I'm Chris Roepke from I-70 Truck Center. Today we're going to try to show you the importance of getting your vehicle to the site safely. Some stuff we can watch out for. Obviously, downtime doesn't make anybody besides me money. It's kind of crazy for me to talk about this because I'm really putting myself out of business, but that's all right. I think with the conditions you guys work in, I don't have much to worry about. I know you guys work in a rough, dirty environment, and that is rough on equipment, trucks, trailers, and everything else. Just a few things they asked me to touch base on. You know, obviously you want to keep DOT off you and stuff like that. So a good, clean vehicle, well maintained, helps your downtime tremendously, helps your company, saves everybody a lot of money. So we're going to kind of touch base on a few things. Some of them are just like what I like to do, maybe some helpful hints. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask, stop me, whatever you want to do. I think everybody has a inspection form here. That's kind of what I'm going to be going by, maybe jumping around a little bit. Everything, I'm going to touch base on a few important matters first thing. And that's like when you show up in the morning and you're going to work, you need to start your vehicle and let it warm up. That's very important. Get the oil thinned out a little bit. Get heat in the engine before you take off. Whenever you take off, if your oil's cold, nothing's getting lubricated. It may not happen that day, but eventually it's going to cause major problems. You know, make sure there's plenty of air pressure. You know, at least 100 pounds, and then release your brakes. Give it a little bit of time. And if you're pulling a trailer with air brakes, I like to pull out, turn both ways, watching your mirrors. Make sure your trailer wheels are turning so you don't drag them. Flat spot tires. It gets very expensive for the company, and it happens, especially like this time of year when it's cold. You come in at night and the brakes are hot, you set the brakes, the water freezes and brake shoes to the brake drum, and then you're just going to drag your wheels for a while. When there's a lot of moisture, you may even have to get out and tap on the brake drum with a hammer. That helps a lot if they won't release. But pay attention. Most of the times we're parked in rocks, so it'll just slide. It won't really flat spot the tires till you get out on the highway. I've been by there before, and they've laid some pretty good black marks almost all the way to the stoplight. So just a few pointers there. And when you start it up in the morning, before you start it, pop the hood, check your oil level and your coolant level. When it's cold, your coolant level might be down just a little bit. That's okay. And your oil level will be down. If you check your oil level after it's hot and you just shut it off, your oil level is going to be low. If you think it's low, you're going to add some, and then you're going to be overfull. And that's just as bad as being low. So make sure it's cold, and you know, if you want to do it in the evening, that's okay, as long as it shuts the truck is shut off for 10-15 minutes and that oil runs back down into the oil pan. You know, just a few pointers to keep in mind, stuff like that.
Back to what you're saying about your brakes in the morning. You get in your truck and you release, you let it warm up, you release your truck brakes. That doesn't mean your trailer's ready to go, because you have not pushed air, you haven't released that trailer valve to push air back into that tank of the trailer to allow those brakes to release. I mean, a lot of guys get in it, they let it warm up for 5-10 minutes, great. The air built up, great. They push buttons, put it in reverse, away we go. We try to back up. Well, you haven't allowed that trailer to build its air pressure up and fill that tanks to release those brakes. So you still need to give that trailer time to tractor to push air back to that trailer so it can release those brakes and then hopefully prevent it from pushing that trailer and locking those wheels up.
And, yeah, very much so, because, and a lot of times, most guys release the trailer first, because it does take more time, but to each is its own. Unfortunately for you guys, most people like drive the same truck every day. You guys are always driving different trucks, so I understand it, so it's kind of hard. But to get to know your truck really well, you know, when you're driving down the road, you know, if you just listen to your truck, you can learn a lot, and that's stuff that me or Kevin will not find by just changing oil and stuff like that. If you notice a vibration, if you notice your air dryer popping off like every 30 seconds, that's important. It should not pop off until you get down to 90 pounds on the gauge, and then it should kick in and come back up to 120 and then pop off. And that should take, depends on what you're doing, every 5 or 10 minutes maybe at the most. But if it's popping off like every 30 seconds, you're going to wear that air compressor out in a matter of a couple months. And then like when you do your pre-trip, a few extra things, you should drain your air tanks every day. You know, every time you stop in the morning or evening, whichever you prefer. There's either pull cord, you can pull the cord, air pop out, just make sure there's no moisture in there, or they're just quarter turn valves, just crack them open. And if you get a lot of moisture, let somebody know. Write it down on a piece of paper, give it to Kevin. Because that's stuff that like me or him will never know until it's too late. You get moisture in your tanks, wintertime you have frozen valves, and hopefully not, but if you ever get in an accident, a bad one, believe me, I know this, the first thing they're going to do is impound your truck, and they're going to cut them air tanks open, and if there's moisture or oil in them air tanks, it's your fault. I know that for a fact. I don't want to scare anybody, but that's kind of the importance of all of this. There's too many lawyers out there with nothing to do, and hopefully we can stay away from all that by just draining the air tanks. Let somebody know, a lot of moisture, just an example. A lot of different things that can go on there if you got oil or moisture in your air tanks. Like first thing, like on this inspection, and I'm assuming you're supposed to do it every day, every morning before you leave. Lighting and reflectors. One thing that I do know that DOT keeps a close eye out for is like reflective tape on your mud flaps in the back. Make sure you have mud flaps, make sure all the lights work. Reflective tape on the sides of your bed. Supposed to be on the back of the cab. That's a really easy ticket for DOT, and they don't have to work very hard. They can see that going down the road. So that's just something to keep an eye out, and that can happen. You know, you could just, mud flap could fall off when you leave in the morning. So that's something to keep an eye out every morning, and stuff like that. Engine compartment, I touched base on that a little bit. Your oil level, keep it between the add and the full mark. If the engine's cold, it can be down just a little bit, but it needs to be above the add mark. Being too full is just as bad as being not full enough. Like I say, and warming it up in the morning is very important. Thin that oil out a little bit, get a little bit of heat in it, stuff like that. And same thing in the evening when you get back. When you pull in a lot, you don't just pull in, shut your truck off. Set your brakes and let it cool down a little bit. You pull in and your turbo's spinning. If you've been running hard from quite a ways away, it could be spinning over 100,000 RPMs. And you shut your engine off, you're going to lose oil pressure, and that turbo's still spinning. And I've seen them spin for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then eventually that's going to wear your turbo out. It ain't going to happen overnight, but eventually it will. And main thing is just I try to let them cool down. It's just a lot easier on your truck. I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. To me, a lot of guys, when they drive the same truck, that's a good time to clean all the trash out of the bottom, You know, we see a lot of Coke bottles underneath brake pedals that, you know, cause accidents. Throw all your trash away, take a broom, sweep out the inside a little bit. Clean windshields, very important. Clean mirrors. Some trucks I see, I don't know how they even can see where they're going, let alone watch their mirrors and watch stuff falling off the trailer or whatever. And like I say, somebody else in a different truck, just be respectful. You know, yeah, you don't have to do it. You let the next guy worry about it, but it does help a lot. A good clean truck, I don't know why, but it just runs a lot better. With no more maintenance or anything, it just operates a lot better, prevents downtime. So,
Cool down on those trucks, guys, is a big important thing. It's just as important as starting it up and letting it warm up. I mean, that truck can come in and it could be 1,000, 1,200 degrees if you're pulling it hard, and you immediately shut that off. I mean, you're going from hot to cold, and that's when you have head gasket problems and warping your heads and everything else. It may not happen tomorrow, but it's going to create problems down the road a lot. So, I mean, at least 3 to 5 minutes, let that thing cool off while you get out, clean your junk out of your truck, take stuff to your car, your lunchbox, your cover hauls, and then go back, you know, shut it off.
okay. Next one would be the front of the tractor, steering box, steering linkage and stuff. Really, all you can really do there is just notice any oil leaks around the box. That's stuff that we can catch, is no problem. But as you're going down the road or when you start it up in the morning, if that power steering pump whines real loud or something, that probably means it's a little low on oil, or the oil in it's too heavy, or it needs a filter change. You know, unless we start them up every morning, we know what they sound like, we won't know. That's something you probably need to let somebody know. Pay attention to your power steering pump, the noise, anything like that. The front bushings, spring mounts, you know, that all will reflect on how it drives, how it handles going down the road. Sometimes you'll get the front end wandering with a trailer on, but not with it off, and we never see them with a trailer on, so you need to let somebody know about that. You know, as far as inspecting them and knowing whether they're good or bad, that's kind of our job, but knowing that something's going on sure helps a lot. Prevent some downtime and stuff. Rear of the tractor, we got drive shaft, which, you know, that if you get a bad U-joint or something, you're going to feel a vibration in a pull or something like that. We may or may not catch it while we're greasing it. Eventually we will when the drive shaft falls out, but obviously by then it's too late. Exhaust system, if you notice any smell of exhaust in the cabs, any more of these newer trucks, it's about impossible to see the whole manifold and stuff. So if you notice it being a little louder than it used to be, or you know, the smell of fumes when you pull a hill or something like that, there's a leak somewhere and we need to know, and sometimes they're bare to find, but if we have enough complaints about it, we will find it. Something like that. Frames, I've covered like some frames and tires and wheels right now. Pay attention if you notice any rust spots. Like if you're looking on the side of a truck and you notice some rust running down, there's probably a crack in the frame and your wheels, mainly steel wheels. If there's a lug nut a little loose, first thing that's going to happen, you're going to get some rusted streaks going down the wheel and stuff. Pull it in the shop and hit it with an impact gun, have Kevin, or I just want you to know that we're always there. If you guys have a noise that you're not quite familiar with or you've never heard, on your way out, just swing by the shop and grab one of us, me or one of the guys there, and say, hey, listen to this or look at this. And, you know, it could save you from not making it to your job, or we may say, yeah, it's something, we'll take care of it at a later date, or no, we need to fix it now. You either need to go back and get a different truck or go to the orchard and drink beer. So, you know, so if you guys, but there's no point in leaving if you don't think you're going to make it. So Sometimes Kevin don't like the answer every time, but we try to keep them wreckers on and out of business too. But unfortunately, they make plenty. So don't hesitate to stop by the shop and just grab one of us and look at something or anything like that. Or if you're not 100% sure, we don't always have the right answer, but we will find one. Worst comes to worst, we'll lie to you. But so don't hesitate. Always keep in mind that's why we're there, and try to help out. We'll go over the pintle hitch, ball hitch type. Like when you're hooking up a trailer, main thing is hook up to it. You latch your pintle hitch or ball hitch. Make sure that latch latches. The safety is down and all that.
Always grab it and try to pull up on it. Some of those hitches, yeah, they will close, but that latch, if you don't keep it lubricated and they get a little rusty, that latch doesn't trigger itself to keep it from coming up on its own. And if you go down the road with a pintle and you're weighing heavy in the back of that trailer and you hit a bump and it happens to pop the front of that pintle up, it'll come up and you're unhooked, and you better hope you have some damn good safety chains at that point.
Correct.
So always pull up on that. Give it a little lubrication every once in a while. Sometimes they just stick and they just don't latch. So don't plan on them just because they close that you're good to go on that.
Yeah, and it wouldn't hurt to carry a can. I don't know if you do or not, carry a can of penetrating oil in your cab. If you don't, stop by the shop. I've got plenty. I'd be more than happy to sell it to them. Just spray it down once a month or whatever. But I'm sure after I send them a bill for a can every now and then, they'll have plenty laying around. But and that will help tremendously too. It should latch every time. So.
Chains and boomers also. I mean, WD-40 or whatever you prefer will take you a long ways on, especially ratchet boomers. Ratchet boomers ain't worth a crap if you can't make them ratchet right or make them work easily, but they're great if you got them working right. So, I mean, that lubrication is your friend on those. They work great if you keep them lubricated and don't throw them in the mud that's on the bottom of your trailer, because that's the worst thing you can do. Because the first thing you do is you wind all that mud up into them threads, and they just don't work very good. So that lubrication works great for your keep your boomers lubed up too.
Yeah, and while you got your penetrating oil in your hand, when you hook up your air lines on the air brakes, squirt a little bit. Wouldn't even hurt to get a little bit inside the air hose and put it on the rubbers. And when you hook it up, they'll lock a lot easier. I'm sure everybody's had it happen. You go around the corner and it pulls free because you didn't get it locked all the way down. Put a little penetrating oil on them rubbers and it'll just, it'll lock in. Because yeah, once you're sitting out in the middle of the road, half turn in both lanes, they come off and it gets pretty interesting for a little bit. So that helps a lot too, to make sure you get it locked. Safety chains from the truck to the trailer is what I like to do, is cross them and make sure they're not dragging too close to the ground. If they are, maybe give them a twist, and that'll raise them up a little bit, once or twice, depends on what you got on, how high you're riding off the ground. Twist your chains and it'll raise them up so they don't drag. It don't take long to be dragging them on the road to make them where even if it comes unhooked, they're not going to hold anymore. So just a little pet peeve I do. I don't know what your proper way is.
No, that's great.
Okay. The side of trailers, the landing gear, I don't know. That's pretty self-explanatory, doors and everything.
Jacks, basically, yeah, the jacks, I mean, not only do you need to wind them up all the way, but if they're the pin setting jacks where it had 3 and 4 different pin settings on it, use that also, pin that up too all the way, because even, all right, you're 6 inches off of ground when you leave the parking lot, but you go over a railroad track in the middle of some town, you're either gonna get hung up or tear the jack off. So use the pin and wind it up both completely, get it up off the ground. And it's not a good idea usually to unload anything off of that trailer if you ain't hooked to a truck. Don't use your jack as what's going to hold you there, because that jack's probably just going to get bent and broke, or the trailer's going to flip up with you trying to get it unloaded off the back. So make sure that trailer is hooked to a tow vehicle before you try to unload something off of it.
And tires and wheels on the trailer. Basically same thing. And something I forgot to mention earlier, like your pre-trip inspection, I like to take a hammer, tap on the tires, and once you've done a few, you're going to be able to tell whether it's low or if it's got enough air in it or if it's completely flat. You don't have to hit it real hard. I was talking to a driver the other day up at ADM. They used to have their drivers bump the tires. He hit a tire, a hammer come back, hit him in the head and knocked him out. So they don't bump tires anymore. But you don't have to hit it real hard. I usually just hit it with my hand. If you have a hammer, just tap them all. You'll hear the thump, and you'll know if it's flat or low. Look at the outside tire. Most times it's the inside tire because they get neglected the most. If the outside tire's squatting real bad, one of them's low or flat. And then, you know,
Peek your head in between the two tires if you have a tandem, and if they're almost touching down there at the bottom of the ground, that means one of those tires is probably low, even without tapping it.
Yeah. And I mean, and just as important or more important, checking your oil level in your hubs. Some of them have different style hubs.
These are a few that we run anyway. This is just your grease cap. Not a big deal other than if one comes off, you need to pay attention. Don't run around with it off because it don't take but a day's worth of driving and it's full of dirt or sand or gravel, and pretty soon you got a bearing going out and you're inviting a lot of trouble. These here are nice, the oiled axled ones, but they're plastic, of course, so they don't take a lot of abuse. So don't use them as a step to climb on top of to get on your trailer, and don't use them to rub the dirt and the mud off the bottom of your boots during the middle of the day, because you either break them, you crack them, or you can just spin these loose. They'll work themselves loose. And these don't hold a lot of oil, so you can't afford to lose any oil. Keep your wheels clean. You can tell right away if you've got one of these leaking, because if your wheel is if it collects dust and it's not clean, or it looks black, and you can tell. Keep your wheels clean. You can tell right away if one of these is leaking and it needs attention, because like I said, they don't have but a few ounces of oil in them to begin with, so you can't afford to lose much. So just kind of keep your wheels clean and pay attention to that, or you'll have troubles down the road too.
And on this style and this style, right in the middle, it says how high the oil is supposed to be. And, you know, like if you'd happen to put a new one on out on the road or something, you'll fill it up and it will go down. And after you run, just have it up to that line. I'm kind of bad about it. I just fill it up until it almost runs out, which is real close. A little too much is a lot better than not enough. This style here is real bad about the glass breaking out on the inside, and then you just put a whole new cap on and stuff. But it's the same way. There's a add and a full mark right in that glass. Just try to keep it between there or a little over the full mark. On those, it's okay to overfill them. Then we have brakes, chambers, hose, drums, and lining. They can't hardly expect you to crawl underneath there and look at your brake lining, but like in the morning when you leave and you release your trailer brakes or your tractor brakes, kind of listen for an air leak. If you're getting a bad brake chamber, you'll start getting air out from underneath there somewhere, or when you step on the pedal, you'll get an air leak. That's a sign of a bad brake chamber. Don't take long to fix, but it is a DOT violation if either one leaks. It could be a hose or the valve or something like that. And sometimes it requires two people, one person to hold the pedal down and another guy to listen. So if you got somebody with you and you're doing your pre-trip, it don't hurt for both of you to get involved. If it's anything like our place, usually one guy's working, the other guy's sitting in the cab sleeping. So, so yeah, just walk around, listen for an air leak anywhere. That all helps us, because if you guys bring me a truck and I service it, you know, I'm not going to find that without driving it down the road. So that's something that can really be noticed. And the lining, if you hear a squealing noise when you step on the brakes, that means it's too late, but it definitely needs attention. But most of them anymore, you can't really see the lining unless you take the backing plate off and stuff, or really crawl underneath it. You can notice a few things. If you notice braking not quite as good or something like that. On the suspension, airbags are kind of the same way. Like when you get there on your pre-trip, and if you parked it the night before and your airbags are aired up, they should be aired up the next morning. If they're not, you could have one seeping, maybe hard to find. You could have a leveling valve bad, and stuff like that. But if they're down in the morning, there is a problem. You know, I know it's not a reason to take the day off, but it does need to be addressed, and somebody needs to know about it. And the airbags will stay up overnight. And the one thing I wanted to touch, that's one thing that's very important about building your air in the morning. A lot of that stuff don't start working until you get at least 90 pounds of pressure in your air system. Airbags is one of them, like your fan hub and all that stuff. If you don't have at least 90 pounds, they won't work at all. And they all got 90-pound check valves in them, and your airbags won't even come up unless you have 90 pounds of pressure in your system. So that's another good reason to make sure you got enough air pressure in the morning before you take off.
On some of those lighter trailers, the suspension, stick your head under there every once in a while, look around your leaf springs, your shackles, whatever type trailer you have, because those suspension bolts will break, they will come loose. They'll work their way either in or out, and most of the time they'll work their way in towards the broken off piece into your tire, and then it'll chew the inside of your tire out, and then you've got two problems. You got a broken suspension and you're sitting along the road with a bad tire. And I've had guys that they'll go get a new tire, put it on there, drive 2 miles down the road, and I say, what the hell, my tire just blowed again. Well, they got a bolt sticking out of that suspension and it's rubbing the inside of that tire. So stick your head under there. If you notice some abnormal tire wear, or it looks like one axle ain't running true, it's probably not. There's a suspension bolt broke, and as you're going down the road, you're not pulling that trailer straight, and you're not going to make it very far. So stick your head under there every once in a while. And any type of mule tape, string, keep that picked up. Don't let it fall through the cracks of the boards on the trailer, because that all winds up around that axle back there, winds up around your brakes or your brake wires. Just causes a whole lot of trouble to take care of and get fixed, and so keep that picked up.
Rear of trailer. Of course, obviously mud flaps is very important. That's a DOT violation. Doors and ties. You want to touch base on the tie and down loads and stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have many trailers with doors, but we do have one that has the hydraulic lift tailgate. Of course, you need to make sure that's all up and folded before you take off and go around with it. Ramps on some of them, a lot of them smaller trailers or whatever we haul minis on. When you go to chain those ramps up, those ramps need to be pulled all the way to the outside, both directions, and then chain them as tight as you can. If you just pick the ramps up in the middle and chain them as you go down the road, that chain's going to pull those ramps from the inside to the outside, and as it pulls it closer to the outside where they should have been, it just keeps letting that ramp drop a little more, and before you get home, your ramp's probably about dragging on the ground, or is. So you need to pull all those ramps over to the outsides as far as you can before you chain them. Some of those bigger hydraulic assist ramps that we have on some of our bigger trailers, be aware of those. They work great, but you got to know how to use them too. Don't have anybody standing around those hydraulic, or I should back up, air assist. The air assist ramps on some of them big trailers, because if you pull the valve on that and give it everything it's got like all at once, those ramps won't be able to catch themselves, and they'll just go all the way down at once. So make sure nobody's standing around the perimeter of those ramps while you're using it. And when you go to let those ramps down or up, I mean crack them. Don't give it all the air all at once. Just crack them for a second or two and let them get caught up with each other, and then go ahead and follow them through that way. That's about all I got on that, I think.
Okay.
Breakaway cable on some of those trailers. The little hook in the cable you hook up for your breakaway, your safety breakaway for your brakes. Those need to always be hooked to like the D-rings on the truck. Don't hook them to the safety chain itself. That's illegal. And don't wrap them around the chain and then hook them. Just, they have to be able to work properly, so they have to be on their own hook, on their own D-ring, to where if you do have an accident and that trailer comes unhooked from that truck, that will allow that to pull out and set those brakes and lock that trailer up and not hopefully go into further traffic or hit somebody else.
All right, and then we have engine start. When you start your engine, make sure you build oil pressure. Probably 99% of them, if you don't, you're going to get a light, a buzzer, or the engine will shut itself off. And when pay attention, another thing that cops look a lot at is your low air buzzer. If it's under like 70 pounds, you should have either a light or a buzzer or both. And if you don't, it is a DOT violation, but it needs to be fixed. Just kind of watch out, make sure you got that. Let's say oil pressure. Two things that will shut a truck down if you're ever out on the road and you are having problems is oil pressure and low coolant. A lot of trucks you can see in the reservoir the high and low mark, and if you're having troubles, if you start it up, and it'll usually take about 15 seconds and then it'll shut itself down. You either got a coolant problem or low oil pressure problem. Main thing is just to try to get it back. Pay attention to your gauges. If you start it up and your gauge is showing oil pressure and it's still shutting down, it's either you got a bad sensor for oil pressure or it's coolant. So those are about the only two things that allow the truck to start up and then shut down. Some trucks have idle shutdown. I kind of doubt it if any of yours do. So we won't even go there and do that. But for the most part, it's either coolant or oil. Those are two main things to check if you're having trouble out alongside the road or something. And make sure, and some of them newer ones, if it's just a little bit low, it's going to shut down. I mean, some of them you could put just a cup of coolant in it and then run all day. They are really particular. But and then you guys are starting to get some newer trucks, and that probably will happen sometime. It's quite frequent. And of course down there, and then also when you start your engine, pay attention on your alternator. Make sure your voltage comes up. It should run about 12.5 to 13 volts, somewhere in that neighborhood. If it runs 14, that's okay. If it gets under like 10, it'll shut itself down. You won't, and then you go to start it, ain't going to start. Like if your alternator's bad, you're going to run about 10 volts. You need to let somebody know that, or swing it by the shop. It could be the belt's loose, it could be the alternator itself, it could be the batteries, but just keep in mind if you're out and something happens, if you get below 10 volts, you're going to be sitting along either in the middle of the road or on the side of the road. Just keep that in mind. It will run. If you're trying to make it home, you can do some small things. Shut your heater off, shut the radio off, make sure all your lights are shut off if it's daylight, and hopefully then you can at least get back or get off the road or get to a shop somewhere. And then of course the stuff towards the bottom there, that's all, it's very important, but it's your mirrors, if you have any crack, that's a violation. Windshields, wipers, you got to make sure your wipers are operable and you have good wiper blades. Your horns, if I remember right, I think you got to have one or the other, a city or an air horn. One of them has to work. Your heat and your defrost. And of course your safety emergency stuff, your triangles, your fire extinguisher, you got to make sure you have them, you have access to them, and they are charged on your fire extinguishers. If they're buried somewhere underneath the seat, underneath all your clothes, the cops don't like that. They will warn you, but at least you have one. Need to kind of make sure that your fire extinguisher is charged. Most of them, there's a gauge on the side that says full and empty. Just read it, but you want to cover electric brakes?
Yeah, I'll just touch on it a little bit. This is electric brake controller. It's the style we have in most of our trucks at JCCI Cable. A lot of people, I don't think, really know what it does or how to properly use it. A lot of people don't know on the other side there's that level button. There's the power. There's 4 main components on here. You got the level dial to your left as you're sitting in the seat. You got the power on the right. You've got the slide knob, and then the light on top, which would be green, yellow, orange, red as the intensity as you turn your brakes up. And there's a proper way of setting these. And you have to set these. Even though, every truck to every trailer, it becomes different. Every load you put on that trailer, it becomes different. If it's in the morning and the brakes are cold, or if as the brakes warm up, it all changes. So you gotta adjust these to what you need, so you're not dragging tires around and making them flat, or not having brakes at all when needed. So I won't go through it intensely here, but there should be this piece of paper in your little thing if you want to go through it and look at it yourself, help figure it out. But you should have a green light on top. When the trailer is plugged into the truck, that light should be green when you hop in there. And when you go to start your truck and you push your pedal down, this power knob on the right, you can adjust with your foot on the brake or pulling this manual slide. You should be able to turn that to red, yellow, orange, whatever on your intensity. And then this level side is that's to level it. It's critical. The adjustment determines whether automatic braking response is delayed or aggressive. So when you're coming up to a stop sign or a stop light, and it either is going to be, just hit you hard, then it's set too tight. Or if it feels like it's not doing much at all, but then a few seconds go by and then you feel it catching in, well, you need to set it up a little bit. It's just the speed, the response, the delayed response or the aggressive response that your trailer brakes are acting with your tractor brakes. So you can fine tune it. It shows you how to do it. If you have any questions, you can talk to me later or whatever. I won't go through the whole thing, but there is a sequence to doing it and doing it right. After you do it a couple times, you'll have it figured out. But that's all I have.
Okay, and that's really all I have. Just keep in mind, if you got any questions, stop by the shop. I don't expect you to know everything, but swing by the shop, grab one of us. We'll look at it and give you our opinion. So, thank you for your time.